Okay. Hello, everybody. So this week's Torah portion, as you see in the handouts that I gave you, is Parshat Bamidbar, the portion of Bamidbar, which is the beginning of Chumash Bamidbar, the book of what's called in English Numbers. So if you look here at our chart of all the Chumashim, we have the 5 books. There's Bereshit, Genesis, Shemais, Exodus, Vayikra, Leviticus, which we just finished this past week, and this coming week we're starting Chumash Bamidbar, the book of Numbers, and the final book is Devarim, Deuteronomy, Devarim. So when we start with the chapters, we start again, chapter 1, verse 1. We start from the beginning again. Each book starts from chapter 1, verse 1. There are no commandments in this week's Parsha. If you look at the handout, I don't know why one year I decided to do this, but look at this handout in your this is called, the handout is Aliyos on Shabbos. Aliyot on Shabbos. Aliyot is plural of Aliyah. This doesn't mean moving to the land of Israel. It means Aliyah means being called up to the Torah. It's related because Aliyah means when you move to Israel, you're making Aliyah, you're going up to a holy place. But what we're referring to here is Aliyah of being called up to the Torah. So usually on a regular Shabbos, there's a minimum of 7 plus 1 people called up to the Torah. Holidays are different. Holidays are less. During the weekdays is much less, but that's what it is. So the first person called up, if there is a Kohen means what? I'm sorry? A priest, right. So he's a descendant of Aaron from the tribe of Levi. So he'd be called up first. If there isn't a Kohen, then a Levi could be called up instead, or an Israelite. Second Aliyah would be given to a Shani is given to a Levite. Again, assuming there is a Kohen and a Levi in the synagogue. If there is a Kohen and he got the Kohen, then he could have the Levi Aliyah as well if there isn't a Levi in his place. If there's no Kohanim or Leviim, then it could be just Yisraelim throughout. If there's no Kohen, the Levi doesn't have to get Kohen, but the first Aliyah, but he could. And then there's the third Aliyah Shlishi, fourth Aliyah Revi, fifth Aliyah Chamishi, sixth Aliyah Shishi, and the seventh Aliyah Shavi. Now, the Chumashim have that marked off in the Chumash. So you will see that on the article, it's on the margin on the right. In other Chumashim, it's in the text itself. When you're following along, they'll stop there. Now, sometimes a shul may add more breaks to give more people a chance to be called up, but generally that's what it is. So when they conclude the parsha, they call up somebody for maftir, which is for the reading from the book of prophets, but they give him a little chance to read in the Torah as well. So he usually repeats. The reader will repeat a little part of the very end of the parsha for that person called up to read something from the book of prophets. And then there's the Hagba and Galila. That's the one. Hagba is the one who lifts the Torah, and Galila the one who binds it. And then there's the Haftarah, the reading from the book of prophets, which is usually related to something in the parsha. Anyone have any questions on this? Now, the section of the book of prophets developed years ago when the powers that be, the wicked nations that were in charge, didn't allow the Torah reading to take place on the regular Torah portion. So the rabbi said, you know what, we'll read something in the book of prophets related to the regular Torah portion, so we still are connected to that. And that's what they did. And then after that, those wicked people left, or were chased out, or were killed, whatever, the rabbi said, you know, this is a nice idea, let's continue to do it. So at the end of the regular Torah reading, they read something from the book of prophets. All right, so this is just a general overview of what happens when the Torah is taken out on a Shabbos or a holiday. Again, the holiday, the aliyahs are less. On a regular weekday, Mondays and Thursdays, there's only 3 people called up. But that's the general idea of what we're talking about. Everybody with me? Any questions? Feel free to ask. I'd like to begin with making a suggestion. I'm not saying this is fact. I'm saying this as a theory I have. And that is what are our 5 senses? Go ahead. This is not a trick question. So that's the greatest gift that God gave us, that we have the ability to sense all the environment around us. And I'd like to suggest that the 5 books of the Torah correspond to one of the senses. Okay, so Bereshis, Genesis, is what the patriarchs and matriarchs are doing, and that gives us, like, you walk into a house and you smell a good smell of cooking. You didn't taste anything yet, but it smells good because you have an idea what the meal is going to be like, right? So Bereshis, Genesis, is like the fragrance of what's coming to be, because the nation, the Jewish people, the Jewish family, the matriarchs and the patriarchs are introduced, if you will, and begin to build the Jewish family. So Bereshis would be fragrance. It also fits in with a verse in Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs. We can elaborate that another time if you're interested. Shemos, Exodus, I would suggest is sight, because that's where they saw the miraculous events of the plagues and the splitting of the sea, and ultimately of the giving of the Torah. Vayikra, I'd like to suggest, is taste. It has the laws of kashrus in it, kosher food, as well as the sacrifices that were brought. Bamidbar is touch, because in it has the census that's going to be taken of the Jewish people, and in it they're going to see that some of the word, interestingly enough, for the word for taking a census is nasai, to lift up the individuals. And actually, the Levites were physically lifted up, but the idea is that Bamidbar would be touch, and Devarim would be hearing, because it's Devarim are words. Eila Devarim, these are the words. So again, a suggestion that Bereshis, the gift of the Torah, has all 5 elements. Bereshis would be smell, Shemos would be sight, Vayikra taste, Bamidbar touch, and Devarim hearing. Everyone got it? Thoughts, questions? We're good? Okay. Why is the Bamidbar actually means in the desert? So why is it called numbers in English? Because it has a lot of numbers in it. The numbers of what? Of the census taking, of seeing how many Jewish people there are. So what an overview of Chumash Bamidbar would be like, what happened to the Jewish people in the desert when they left Egypt? And Shmais, they left Egypt. They were in Egypt. They left Egypt. They were saved, and they got the Torah, and they built the Mishkan. They built the tabernacle. Vayikra has a lot of the rules and laws about about many mitzvahs, many commands, and also about the tabernacle. Chumash Bamidbar actually talks about what happened in the Midbar when they were in the desert. They were supposed to be there for a short time, but that did not happen. They ended up being longer. So that's what Chumash Bamidbar is going to be about. And as we're going to see, commentaries talk about why was the Torah given in a desert? Why would the Torah be given in a desert? Why not in the land of Israel? Why not in a beautiful place? Why a desert? And there's important answers there. Number one is it's access for all. It doesn't need the perfect environment. Doesn't need the perfect time or location. There were people who were learning Torah during Corona. There are people learning Torah even in the Holocaust. It doesn't need a holy place. It doesn't need Israel. If the Torah, God gave us the Torah in Israel, we say, oh, it's only for Israel, not for the rest of the world. Unfortunately, we spent a lot of the last 2,000 years in exile all over the place. And as the Pasuk says, we say it in our prayer service, Torah tzivavanu Moshe Marasha Kilis Yaakov. The Torah is commanded to us by Moshe, and it's inheritance for the assembly of Jacob. There was an interesting question that was asked during the Holocaust. There was some Jews that were imprisoned by some of the local authorities, probably eventually to pass them over to the Nazis. And in this particular prison, they allowed them, the friends and neighbors, to give some extra food. So they had an interesting question. Could they give the food in pages of the Talmud, which means ripping out pages of the oral Torah and using that as like the wrapping, the newspaper wrapping? Why would they want to do that?
Help the Jewish people to pray.
So they could study. The food was helpful physical, but the Talmud pages would give them something to study and help them, pardon the play on words, rejuvenate, right? They would be, it would increase their give them strength, spiritual strength. Now, obviously, taking a page of the Talmud and using it to wrap your chicken in is not appropriate, but they asked the Jewish law question about this, and the ruling was that they were allowed to do it because of the importance of keeping them connected to the Torah study. So there's this person I knew who, after his concentration camp was liberated, so what did everybody do? What did the vast majority of people do?
We,
right? They went looking for food. They were starving, right? And he went to look for a Torah book to study. And his wife said to him, we have to eat something. He said, you know what? I will eat soon, but I haven't learned in a book in a long time. I want to find something that I could study. There was nothing wrong with him going to eat first, but his priority was to learn. And that's what the Torah is about. And that's why it doesn't have to be in Israel. It doesn't have to be in the most beautiful place. It has to be anywhere. And that's why the desert is chosen. Also, the desert is chosen because the place of humility. Nothing much going on there. It's a desert. It's empty. Also, to help us realize that we have to focus less on money and things if you want to accomplish something in learning. And you have to be open. The desert is open. You have to be open to Torah concepts. I use this example all the time about the man who brought his friend a very nice bottle of wine, and he poured it into his cup, and the guy said, ooh, this is terrible. Ooh. Okay, it's a very expensive bottle of wine. I thought you'd like it. I bought a different bottle, poured it in there, and said, ooh, this is even worse. Ooh. And then I said, let me see the cup. And he realizes the cup is filled with 2 days ago's coffee. If you don't clean out some of the stuff from the past, it's hard to make a good taste with the new stuff. So the desert is a symbol of letting go of the past and trying to be open to new ideas and new concepts that we're not used to. And that's why, again, the Torah was given in the desert. So a lot of important reasons. So why is Torah study important? Well, the first thing is it's food for the soul. That's what nourishes our soul. Just like your body needs food, so does the soul. Interestingly enough, God's light is embedded in the Torah. There's a fascinating statement where we say, God says, you know what, you don't believe in me? Don't worry about me. You just study my Torah, and the light in it will connect you to me. And this is very true. this actually happened many times in Jewish history. In the Soviet Union, in the former Soviet Union, there was a fellow named Elio Esas who would go around and try to, teach people Torah. And we have these questions about God. Does God exist? The Soviets did a very good job of getting everybody not to believe in God. And he said, hey, you study with me for 6 months, and then any questions you have, I'll sit and answer. And inevitably, after 6 months, he said, oh, you had questions about God? No, we don't have time for questions about God. Let's study. So the light of the Torah in it really reveals God within our soul. It's God's instruction manual, and it gives us moral clarity. We live in a time with a lot of craziness. There was a child named Alfie Evans in England, socialist medicine, and she was a very, very ill child, and the government decided that that's it, her plug should be pulled. And the parents said, no, we don't want to pull the plug yet on it. And the government said no. So both the Pope at that time and another country as well were willing to transport Alfie to a medical facility out of England to honor the parents' wishes. The British government said no and put police in the room so that nobody should steal Alfie out. And the parents were left not being able to do anything for her. Story number one. Story number two, a very famous scientist. Richard Dawkins feels it's immoral not to abort a Down syndrome child. And Frank Steffens, a young man living with Down syndrome, the article is an amazing article. I'm not going to spend the time reading it, but he writes, my life has meaning and purpose, and I'm glad my parents didn't. And he's very articulate. He spoke very, very well. Again, if you're interested in the copy, I can give you a copy of the article. The Washington Post has an article from a professor who argues for infanticide. This full-time tenured professor of bioethics, that's what his job is, ethics. And he's former president of the International Association of Bioethics. And he advocates it, not for every infant, but for any severely disabled infant. And Princeton chose him for an endowed seat of all places, the University Center for Human Values. Human values to kill children. And his claim is human babies are not born self-aware or capable of grasping that they exist over time. They're not persons. But animals are self-aware, and therefore the life of a newborn is of less value than the life of a pig, dog, or chimpanzee. Now, I don't know if anybody agrees here with that, but I don't. And since when does self-awareness have anything to do with whether a person should live or not? Singer has been influenced by Jeremy Bentham, the founder of modern authoritarianism. Bentham held that the foundation of morals and legislation should be, as Singer explains him, to maximize pleasure or happiness and minimize pain or unhappiness. We try to raise children with this notion: maximize pleasure or happiness and minimize pain or unhappiness. Guess how capable our children are going to be to function in life? They're not going to be very capable at all, because if the whole goal is, I just want to be happy, I just want to have pleasure, pain or unhappiness, any goal that's worthwhile, it's going to take pain and unhappiness. Think about anything stupid. You want to lose weight? That's not so easy. You want to get a degree? Takes work. You want to become a better person? Takes work. If the goal of morality is based upon, in their words, maximize pleasure or happiness, then forget about it. Do whatever you want. As long as you're happy, that's the main thing. It's pretty pathetic, pretty sad stuff. And this is an interesting thing. In Practical Ethics, Singer disputes Dr. Leo Alexander, who was an expert witness at Nuremberg trials, and later wrote that the crimes of the Nazis before the gas chamber started from small beginnings. The acceptance that there is such a thing as a life not worthy to be lived. If you begin to think that there's a life that's not worthy to be lived, then you can decide that Jews are not worthy to be lived and they should be gassed. And the examples go on and on and on, but the point of these examples is why it's so important that we have a Torah that gives us moral clarity. There's a case going on right now. There's a woman who's brain dead. I think it's in Emory University in the hospital there. And she has a baby. And because the state has a strong anti-abortion law, they're keeping the woman alive to allow the baby to come to full term. And guess what? The family's very upset. We want to mourn our daughter and our sister already. You can save a life. It's your daughter's child. And I understand that it's not easy, but what's the right thing to do? Yeah. Please.
Mother is sick.
Yes.
Brain damage.
Yes.
It doesn't affect the newborn child. Maybe the child will have medical issues.
Maybe, maybe not. Not necessarily. But yes, but let's say you're right. Therefore what? So we should kill the child? What? Why? The child can survive. If the child can live and can have a full life.
Different, but due to the circumstances.
Yeah.
Child can be born with different.
Maybe.
Suffer all your life.
Maybe. But it's better to be alive. I mean, I'll just give you a related tangential example. There was an American soldier in Iraq that there was his truck that was bombed, and he was paralyzed at that time. He became paralyzed, and he wanted to tell his buddies to kill him because he couldn't imagine living life being paralyzed, but he couldn't talk at that moment. So they saved his life. Now he wanted to die because he couldn't believe he couldn't move his muscles, anything. It was paralyzed. Later on, he himself became an advocate against the war and became a whole thing about it. Now, because at the time he wanted to be died, that means we should have killed him. Did he have a rough life afterwards? Definitely. But to him, we could agree with his politics, not to you, that doesn't make a difference. But to him, he had a life of meaning even afterwards. So the fact that the child would have a difficulty, yes, that the child has a difficulty. So that doesn't mean that we should end the child's life.
Rabbi Czapnik?
Yes.
The example that you just, the one before about the baby, we just had a situation like that in Eretz Yisrael, where the young mother who was pregnant, right? They were able to save, was killed Sila Gas. I was at the Levaya. They saved her child, and they just gave him a name, Rabbi Chaim, so I mean, and he's healthy, Baruch Hashem.
Yeah, there was a terrorist that killed the mother, and the baby was able to be saved, and that's, correct. Thank you for unfortunately reminding us about it. Yep. So it's that's having moral clarity is something that is sorely missed today. Sorely missed. People have all the crazy ideas about what is right and what is wrong, and we don't. If you don't have a guidepost like the Torah, then you can't. Julie had a question, something comment.
Wasn't Israel, she was on her way, she was in labor.
She was in labor, yeah.
So it's a little bit different than the woman who's being kept alive,
Why? In what way is it different?
because the baby was,
So morally, in what way is it different? To either save the child that was right about to be born, or save the child that's going to be born.
because it's not. Like the baby was coming, like she was in labor.
I know. So
She wasn't in labor.
But
By the way, she wasn't in labor.
Let's assume
Yeah.
she was in labor.
Yeah.
What difference would it make if she's having the baby on Tuesday or in 2 months on Tuesday?
I just think it's a difference. Like it's incubating, keeping the mother alive to incubate the baby.
Right.
It's
So
the girl.
what? So morally, what's okay? So it's a little different in the sense of they're not doing anything to the mother.
Yeah.
That part is different. But morally, what's the morally? Really, I don't see the difference that way morally. But that's the point. The point is, if you value life, then and you have the balance of what's important, and you have the direction of the Torah to ask what needs to be done, what doesn't need to be done. There's a story from many years ago about a couple that had Siamese twins, and both children would not be able to survive. And the doctor said, you have to kill one to be able for the other one to live. So, and if you don't, then they're both going to die. So the couple who had the child were a religious couple, and they said, we have to ask a rabbi. And they went to Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, one of the greatest Jewish law authorities in the 20th century. And the doctor said, it was a Jewish man, secular Jewish man, says, I want to go along to the rabbi when you ask the question. And they went to Rabbi Moshe and asked the question. And the first thing Rabbi Moshe did was he started to cry. He didn't know these people. He just started crying. What a terrible, difficult question. And he had the feelings and shared the feelings with the parents. And then he wrote a ruling, and the ruling was that one of the child, it's like he's the Hebrew word for it is rodef, like he's chasing the other one to kill him. So since this one child was chasing the other one to kill him, you're allowed to kill this person first. And he compared it to that. Like if you see someone running with a gun about to kill somebody, you're allowed to shoot that person first. So same here. And the doctor was so moved by the thought process and the sensitivity and the meticulousness of Jewish law that the doctor became religious from it. It was inspired by it. So having moral clarity, or at least knowing that you asked the question. There was a woman of blessed memory that used to come to J.L.E. many years ago, L.E.K., and there was a question about her mother, the treatment her mother should have, medical treatment. I said, Ellie, that's a tough question. I have to look into it and ask people that are experts in the field. And I said, Ellie, what do you think? She gave me a beautiful answer. Says, what I think isn't relevant, because if I make a decision and she dies, then I'll live for guilty. I want to do what the Torah says, what the halacha is. And if I do that, then whatever happens, happens. And it just was, again, it was an inspiring thought process that she had, which was correct. Also, the Torah changes a person. It makes us better people. And the study of Torah also connects us to eternity, because as the Zohar says, the Kabbalists say Yisrael v'Araisa Kut Shebrichu Chatu. Israel and the Torah and God are one. We're interconnected. And just like God is eternal, the Jewish people will be eternal, and the Torah is eternal. And therefore, that's how we connect to eternity. Obviously, it doesn't mean that every individual lives eternally, but the soul lives on. But ultimately, the Jewish people will continue to live. So again, heavy discussion, but an important one. So the Parsha deals with the taking of the census, and the census are the males that are 20 and older that are passive, that are capable of that are obligated to fight in the war. And how did they count them? They counted them by father to know the tribe, and by mother to know if they're Jewish. And they gave them, everyone had to give a half shekel, a coin, so we don't count by numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, because we don't want to use numbers. As I mentioned in the past, my father, of blessed memory, had numbers on his arm, because the Nazis wanted to make him into a number. All the tribes were counted except for Shevet Levi. The Leviim that were counted separately, they were counted from 1 month old, and each camp had Nesiim, had princes that were on top of them. Shevet Levi was by itself. If you look on the handouts in the back of the sheets that I gave you, you can see the 3 camps that the Jewish people had. There was where the Mishkan was, that was Machne Kahuna, and the Kohanim lived around that. Then there was Machne Leviah, where the Levites lived. That was around that. And then all the tribes were around. Each one had their own place. So there was, north was Naphtali, Asher, and Dan. East was Yehuda, Yisachar, and Zebulun. Reuven, Shimon, and Gad was south, and Binyamin, Menashe, and Ephraim were to the west. And there was the Clouds of Glory, and then there was the Erev Rav, the non-Jews who joined the Jewish people when they left Egypt. On Zoom, you can see it. Yeah. Okay. Now, notice there was always going to be 12 tribes, because even though Levi wasn't together with the other one, why? Why were there 12 tribes? Even without Levi there?
Menashe and Ephraim. Yosef was Menashe and Ephraim.
Because Menashe and Ephraim, Yosef was split into 2 tribes. So when Levi was not in the group, Menashe and Ephraim took over, and those were the. So the layout of the Jewish people showed our priorities, with the center being the Mishkan itself, the tabernacle. That was the center, and that was an important lesson for everybody every day, because the Aron, the ark in the Mishkan, represented the written Torah. The menorah, the candelabra, represented the oral Torah. The table represented the physical world that we have to elevate. The Mizbeach HaKtoras, the altar of the incense, is the concept of creating an environment of holiness. The Mizbeach HaKarbana is the altar for sacrifices, is the concept of self-sacrifice, and also for atonement. The kiyar is to prepare washing the hands, washing away the past. The chutzah is the yard to set boundaries. And the entirety of it represents the important institutions of the Jewish people, which would be the synagogue for prayer, the study hall for study, and the Jewish home. Most importantly, the Jewish home. Interestingly enough, if we look at the text, we see, you don't have to get a chumash, I'll just read it to you. On page 737. And by the way, each tribe had a prince, which teaches us an important lesson: the importance of having a rabbi or a mentor that you can ask someone questions about, because people on their own have a vested interest and think, and you need somebody who's a little bit who can view things from a different perspective. So here's the state. Listen to the statement. Tell me what sounds wrong here. These are the offspring of Aaron and Moses on the day Hashem spoke. On the day Hashem spoke with Moses at Mount Sinai. These are the names of the sons of Aaron. The firstborn was Nadav and Avihu, Elazar and Isama. Again, these are the offspring of Aaron and Moshe on the day Hashem spoke with Moses at Mount Sinai. These are the names of the sons of Aaron, the firstborn of Nadav and Avihu.
What about Moshe's?
Doesn't say Moshe's sons. It just says these are the sons of Aaron and Moshe, and then it gives the list of Aaron's sons. So the commentaries tell us a powerful idea that someone who teaches his son, someone else's son's Torah, it's as if they become their son. It's like they're their father. As a matter of fact, when it comes to honoring, one's Rebbe, one's rabbi is honored before one's father, because the father gives brought the physical person into the world, but the rabbi, the teacher, is giving spiritual sustenance. So that's a beautiful idea and there's a beautiful story about it. A man who brought his son to the Netziv, Rabbi Naftali Tzvi Berlin, who was the Rosh Yeshiva at that time of the Volozhiny Yeshiva. And he said to him, please take care of my son. He's my only child. And the Netziv answered, you have but one only child. I have 400 only children. Very beautiful, beautiful answer. So it's important that we can be a role model for somebody else. That's a very special thing. We said the Levim were counted differently. But before we do that, I want to say that there was something called the Golem. The Golem means flags. Each tribe had a flag of something spiritual about them. So I don't have a picture of that here, but here's this. I don't have enough copies to give everybody. Okay, but each one had a symbol. If you go down inside the shul, straight down the stairs, you look at our ark, a beautiful ark. It has different pictures for the different tribes. So you can see that there. And interestingly enough, I'll talk about that in a minute. The Levim were counted from 1 month and over. Moshe said, how am I supposed to count to 1 month older? I'm going to go into each of the tents and look around and who's doing what. And maybe the mothers are nursing the kids, And Hashem said, you do yours. And when you come to the tent, just stand by the tent and I'll tell you what's going on inside, how many children there are from the Levites. And this is an important lesson for us. We're not here to finish the job. We just have to do ours, and hopefully Hashem will help us accomplish the rest. Parsha talks about the redemption of the firstborn that lost their rights because all the other tribes were involved in the golden calf, and that's why the Kohanim and the Levim were there instead. And the three families of the Levites, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari, each had their own job of what they had to do in the Mishkan, especially when it came to transporting and taking apart and putting together the Mishkan, which was the mobile temple that they had in the desert. So interestingly enough, when it lists the various tribes, it has Yisachar and all of them, there's a Vav, there's a and connecting, and this tribe, but Zevulun is not connected. And the reason why is because Yisachar and Zevulun had a unique relationship. Yisachar carried the load of Torah. They were scholars. And Zevulun were the merchants. And they were successful merchants. And they did was they shared their wealth with Yisachar. They said, we'll support you so you can study Torah. So therefore, there's no Vav connecting Yisachar and Zevulun because the supporters are given great honor because they're allowing the Torah to be learned. And, you know, unfortunately, many times wealthy people don't always think this way. There's a rabbi who once gave a speech in the synagogue about the importance of supporting the poor for Passover. And he came home and his wife said, how'd the speech go? She says, half successful. She says, oh, that sounds good. What does it mean half successful? I convinced the poor that they should take. Now all I have to do is convince the rich to give, and everything and everything will be great. There was a man, a very special man. His name was Mendy Klein of blessed memory. And he lived in Cleveland and he gave a tremendous amount of charity. A very wealthy man. And he comes into the office and, do we have any big deals coming up now? He says, I need to fund an important charity project and I need the funds available. Do we have any big deals coming through? And this is a beautiful idea. Tzedakah wasn't a product of his success. It was the goal. I need the successful project so that I can give the charity. Very beautiful, beautiful idea. So that's why Zevulun is given great honor. I'll just conclude with going back to the other discussion. Rabbi Nehemiah Cooper Smith's son is a Down syndrome, and they were listening to a funeral of a young boy that unfortunately was killed. And his father told him, you know, it's time to get ready for bed. And he said, the Down syndrome boy said, he looked him straight in the eye and told his father, Abba, this is about life. I need to learn about what I'm doing wrong and what changes I need to make. He didn't go to bed until he finished the whole thing. A remarkable life cut short, yet Yehuda understood that it wasn't just about death. We're tapping into the real meaning of what life is all about. And that's a powerful idea. And the person to think that the Down syndrome child doesn't have value and should be aborted is very, very sad. The state we are in. And by the way, in Iceland, by the way, there are no Down syndrome children being born, basically. They abort them all. Be that as it may. Any questions, thoughts, comments? Open. The floor is open. Zoom, live. Tonight at 6:30, class on.
Rabbi, were all the groupings? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. No,
Go ahead. Class tonight at 6:30 on the holiday shuls.
Oh, thank you. I was just wondering, were all the tribes then ordered in those groups? There was like groups of 3 on each.
Yeah, they each had their own place. That is correct.
Is that
in the Parsha?
Is that place have meaning? Like, is there a reason why each one isn't where they are? Is there like considered
Well,
something?
interestingly enough, it's similar to when they carried Yaakov's box from Egypt. They also that's how the children stood that way, in the same order that later on they would be in the desert.
Okay.
Yes.
So there's something about that order. It has something to do the way that this tribes
it has a lot to do with a lot of different things, but yes, there is reasoning for it. Any other thoughts, comments, questions?
Are we always meant to be a tribal people when we were going in the land of Israel and we found
in the land of Israel, each tribe had their own section of land that belonged to them.
And that was important to our identity with that land, like we were
Yeah,
supposed to.
each tribe had their own groupings together. There will
And
be class, God willing, next week, so for those of you in Israel probably won't be able to listen. It'll be a little
Yeah.
late. What time is it now in Israel?
10:30.
10:30, okay.
It'll be Shavuot, so sorry. It'll be Tikkun Lo Shavuot time, I guess.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Michelle, share it with me afterwards if you want.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right.
Mhm.
All
What
right.
did you say about Iceland? That they don't have babies anymore because they literally abort all the.
No, they don't have Down syndrome babies.
Oh my goodness gracious! I
Yeah.
wish.
Well,
Haval, they're
yes.
missing on one of the biggest gifts that parents can have.
Yep.
Very sad.
All righty. Feel good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Lila.
you.
So
Take care.
bye.
Thank
All
Or
the best.
have a good day. Bye.
Take care and a great Yom Tov for you in Israel.
You too.
Thank
Good
you.
Yom Tov. Good
Take
Yom
care.
Tov.
All the
Thank you.
best.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. You want a recording of tonight? You're welcome to tonight's class. You could call it in.
You mean it's on Zoom? It's not just on,
Not going to be on Zoom. No, I'm just going to record it.
oh, I see.
Get out of the house. Get out of the house, David. Exercise. Walk. Start walking now. Let's go.
All right, thank you, sir.
Take care.
Thank you,
All right.
Rabbi. Thank
You're
you, Rabbi.
welcome. Who is that?
Sue,
Sue. Feel better. Take care. All the best.
thank you, Kato.
Bye-bye.
Should I stay on or another time, Robert? It's not
You can
urgent
stay
at
on.
all.
I just,
Oh, yeah.
I'll at least take off the recording, so it's not recorded. Whoever stays on.